The I Mold You So podcast with Katie Buckland Weiss.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of I Mold You So with Katie Buckland Weiss. This is the podcast where we uncover the hidden truths about mold illness, toxic exposure, and the path to recovery. I'm your host, Katie, and today I'm sitting down with an environmental specialist in mold detection and indoor air quality, Jared Martin. Jared, thanks so much for joining.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I can't wait to get into everything with you. So if you're listening today because you or someone you love is struggling with mysterious health symptoms, maybe fatigue, brain fog, respiratory issues, or just a nagging feeling that something in your environment isn't right, this conversation is for you. And for so many of us, the idea of mold in our homes is really overwhelming. I know it was for me. So how do you even know if it is mold? How dangerous is it? Do you have to throw everything away? Like what all goes with this? How much does it cost to fix it? And the big one, where do you even start if you think there's mold in your home? So in today's episode, we're going to tackle those questions head on with Jared. And he brings years of hands-on experience helping families just like mine uncover hidden mold, test their environments, and take the first steps towards a healthier home. Together, we'll talk about what to look for, what not to do, and how to move forward without panic in most cases. So if you've ever wondered whether your house could be making you sick, stay tuned. This episode will definitely give you clarity and hope. So Jared, thanks so much for taking the time. And you were working with me and my family about a year ago to help us uncover mold in our new construction home. And we'll get into all of that. But first and foremost, I want to understand from you, what drew you into the field of environmental, mold testing and indoor air quality?
Okay, back in 2001, I had a friend that worked in a laboratory at the Health Science Center for the Centers for Indoor Air Research. And he told me they had an open position. So that's what got me started in indoor air quality and research. From there, I spent about 7 years there doing research. I started out as a lab tech and then finally worked my way up to actually developing the procedures and doing the research from the ground up. We did a lot of focusing on toxins and mold growth in the house, where it's at, how it spreads. And from there, I got to watch individuals, go through health issues. I watched the emotional trauma that people had and also the financial cost. During that time, mold rules were in their infancy. Basically, from the beginning when we worked with the job over in Dripping Springs, the Melinda Ballard case. From that's where the rules were put in place. And then at the very beginning is kind of the Wild West. You had people come out and say they're mold experts, and they'd come in and they take people's money, and they would just not give them the service that they really needed, and they weren't giving them the advice and the expertise in the field. So that's one of the things I didn't like to see. And I wanted to jump in the game to actually help people because I know the health effects that it can have on people and the diseases that it exacerbates in itself, because you can already be sick with something, but yet when you get into a moldy environment and you get with toxins, it decreases your immune system, and then it just makes everything go rampant. So I understand that aspect of it, but also I bring in another edge of it within my industrial hygiene.
Talk to us about that.
It's not just mold itself. We have a whole dynamic that's going on in the house. I mean, your house basically look at it as like a living organism. You got the lungs, the heartbeat, you got everything's flowing in rhythm in the house. And if it's not working properly, that's what leads to issues such as mold. But also we find other issues. One recently that I had was, the individuals, we had one person who has had a recent heart attack, another person has multiple surgeries. Actually, they had a double kidney replacement, and they were having health issues, and they thought it was mold. When I got in there and started looking to find the issue, we actually found out the HVAC system was actually ducted improperly, and they weren't getting the air exchanges since the house was built with nice house, is built really tight and foam. But when you do that, you also create an environment that you can create an unhealthy indoor air quality environment. That can be something other than mold. So when I do my inspections, it's not just looking for the mold. I'm looking for what is the root cause that's causing the effects.
Right. Right.
people
I
know.
have heard quite a bit about new construction homes being built so tight,
Mhm.
that they don't breathe. I had a real estate professional recently say that with all the new construction, where back in the 60s and 70s, houses were breathing, but now they're so efficient and so tight that it could set up an environment that is less than favorable.
Oh, exactly. The buildings get so tight that, you increase your humidity in the house because you're
Hmm.
not exhausting it. And then that can set up areas for mold to start growing, especially like in wall cavities and other places around your sinks and
Yeah.
other
Well, and we
environments.
were in West Texas, right? Where it's
Oh, yeah.
dry.
Yeah. And you're like, oh, it's dry here and you're not going to have the problems. Well, yeah, outside it is, but in our houses, we condition them and we
Right.
create environments that can be favorable for issues. But yes, buildings have gotten so tight that they're missing the component of actually doing air exchanges in the house. You know, you have to artificially breathe the house. You got to bring in fresh air and exhaust it at the same time. If you don't do that, then you kind of defeat the purpose of having a tight house.
Great. And I love bringing your expertise to my audience and really appreciate you taking the time to share this with us. And it's not just me saying, oh, here's my experience and what happened, that we're able to bring you and your years of expertise to share with the group today. So, one of the things I'm curious about is what typically has happened to folks that prompt them to hire you. So, for example, we hired you because I had been sick for 8, 9 months. We were getting no answers. I ended up with pneumonia. They thought it was fungal pneumonia. I ended up doing a mycotoxin test because I was too sick to have a lung biopsy. The mycotoxin test came back very high, off the charts for several mycotoxins, which led me to a physician who specialized in mold illness. He did genetic testing on me and confirmed you are very sick and you are sick from mold exposure. Said you need to go find the mold in your home. So we did an air quality test. My husband did an air quality test at home, just, $100 from Amazon. That came back with some information that led us to you to have a professional come in and try to hunt down this mold. So is that typically what happens? Or what is the call like when people come to you? Like, hey, we think we have mold, or we know we have mold, or we had a leak. Can you share a little bit about that?
Definitely, a lot of times it is an unexplained illness or their allergy, something that's not going away. And they're
Mm,
like, I've never been sick in my life before. Then all of a sudden I'm sick and it just won't go away. Or I have seasonal allergies, but this year I just can't get rid of them.
mm,
It's like, what's going on? So that's definitely one of the calls I get. Other ones is that they know that they've had a leak. They've had a
mm.
plumbing failure, they've had a roof leak, the HVAC system's leaking, or they just know that the outside of the building has failed in some way. And so that's the other end that we get. So those are pretty straightforward too, because if they go, well, we know we have a leak, we know that we've had water. How bad is it? How far did it go?
And that's where you can start.
Yes, that's where I can start.
Okay, so one question I am getting from folks, and I hear kind of urban legend, true or false, this is like a hot topic.
Okay.
I have mold in my house. If I spray mold or if I spray bleach on it, does it treat the mold?
Depends. Here we go. So the rub is this: bleach is great. Sodium hypochlorite works great at deactivating the mold toxins, and the spores, just rendering it safe. But it depends on what it's on. If it's on hard, non-porous surfaces, wonderful. It will work great on that. But when we start dealing with porous substances such as drywall, the
Okay.
bleach
Yes.
itself, molecular structure of the bleach is too big to actually get into the paper, into the backing, and down to where the hyphae are growing. So yeah, you'll spray it on the surface and you'll kill everything it comes in contact with. But then if there's still moisture there, it's going to grow back. Well, if you're spraying bleach on there, about 95% of the spray on there is water. So the
Mm,
bleach, the sodium hypochlorite goes away because it oxidizes off. Then all you have left is moisture still in the wall. And so you're going to basically perpetuate the growth and it's just going to come right back. And,
good.
and
That's a,
then you have people that will spray it and then they cover it up. Well, it doesn't stay hidden forever.
it
It,
comes back.
it comes back. Right. So,
Thanks for answering that. Yeah, I hear a lot of questions around that and a lot of talk in forums. So wanted to come to you as the expert and the scientist and get your feedback on that.
normally what I do is when we're doing remediation and part of the clearance step of it, or the part of the end process of the remediation, is a wet wipe with a biocide. And
Say that again. Let me hear that one more time.
it's a wet wipe with the
Okay.
biocide. So basically, after they remove all the materials, they sand all the studs down, get everything nice and clean. The last step is to actually wipe it down with the biocide, which bleach is. So that's actually one of the last steps, is to use that, is to get anything that's on the surface and make sure that we
Mhm.
destroy anything that's right on the surface before we encapsulate and then rebuild.
Great. And we'll get more to remediation in just a little
Okay.
bit. So, what are the most common signs that a home or workplace may have hidden a hidden mold problem?
A lot of people smell something and they get a nice musty smell. Like the smell came up, we don't know where it came from. Now, smells are hard to track down
Mm-hmm.
as they can come from anywhere, and there's multiple different types of sources that they can come from. But usually it starts with a smell. You see water staining, or you have elevated humidity in the environment. And then there's the whole sick building syndrome. So
Which I had.
basically, while you're in the environment, you start feeling bad. When you leave, you start feeling better. And so
Mm-hmm.
the longer you're away, the better you feel. But then when you come back, you start getting sick
Yes.
again. And that happens in office environments, and it happens at home because you have people
And
that go to work
schools. And
and
schools.
schools. Yes.
Yes.
So those are pretty much the ways to kind of know that you got something going on.
So, in your line of business, how often or what percentage of your work is really around mold in people's homes or workplaces?
About 95%.
Okay, so
But
you are in this all the time.
yes, all the time. Yes.
Okay. So what are kind of the first types of questions you ask when you arrive at a client's home? What is the checklist maybe that you go over to help determine if they have mold and where you might find the mold?
Okay. So basically, I like to go, so what do you have going on? I like to use an open ended question. I want the person there to tell me what they have happening to themselves. Because it's during that conversation that I can normally pick up on where we might be having issues. Is it happening at certain times? Is it happening at night during the day? Is there a certain part of the house they're having an issue with? And when they start talking, say, well, we've had a water leak here, we've had to replace our refrigerator, our AC unit got worked on recently, that starts giving me areas to start looking at to
Mhm.
address those issues. You know your house. You know what's going on. And whenever you have a consultant come in, be open with them. Make sure that you're talking to them. Let them know everything that's going on, anything that's ever happened. It might be something you think is not very important. Well, I had a water leak in the kitchen and then it was dripping, so I fixed it and it's not a problem anymore.
Right, but you
The
don't
first
know. Did you
the
really
first
fix
foundation,
it?
it's like, how long did it go on? And was that the leak or was it somewhere else in the wall? Because you'll sit there and look at the surface, looks fine, but once I get underneath the cabinet or into a wall cavity right there, we might have something there that, just a little comment here or there will help initiate that. So I like to let the homeowner or business owner talk to me first and just let me know what they know is going on with the environment. And then after that, of course, I'm going to go look for areas where water damage occurs most.
Do
I'm
you
looking
use a tool for that? Do you have a moisture meter that you
I got a
use?
moisture meter, yes. First, I do the visual assessments. I want to look at the around the sinks. I want to look in the bathrooms, around the toilets, because wax rings don't last forever.
Mhm.
And then I'm going to look around your washer, your dryer, your refrigerator, your dishwasher. I'm looking for all those connections and to see, have we had a water leak at some time?
Mhm. And maybe
Because
even the homeowner or the tenant doesn't know about it, but
right,
you're able to kind of
exactly. And
look
that's a
and
lot of times I'll sit there and I'll find a leak that they didn't know that they actually had because they're not
right.
checking it very often. Then from there, I want to look at penetrations through the roof. I want to make sure that all your exhaust lines that are going out, sewer vent lines, make sure they're flashed right. You look up there to see if there's water leaks coming in from the top. And
Because
then for
sewer
the
vent lines are supposed to go fully out of the not just into the attic, but out of the attic,
that
correct?
is
Or if they're
correct.
in the attic, they need to have a lid on them.
Sewer vent lines need to go straight up through the attic and outside
Okay.
somewhere because you got to have that airflow for the sewer gas to get out. Now, for exhaust fans in the bathrooms or areas where you have higher humidity, also the kitchen above the stove, those exhaust fans, those need to be exhausted to the exterior of the building. not
And a
to
lot
the
of
loud.
times they're just to the attic now, is that right?
Yes, I find that a lot. And
Mhm.
when you do that, all you're doing is pushing that humidity up into your attic.
That doesn't breathe. These attics don't breathe.
Right. And even if they do, you're still pushing moisture into a space you don't need it. You want to actually exhaust it from the house.
Mhm.
Or you have the vent that just runs and runs right back into the house, and then, you're not actually getting rid of it.
So important, so important. Thanks for addressing that.
Then also, the next step I go to after looking through the attic and your vents, look at the exterior of the house. I want to make sure that we don't have cracks. We don't have point work. We don't have gaps in the envelope that allow moisture to come in from raining events. I want to look at your gutter system. I want to make sure it's actually discharging away from the house and not sitting up against the house.
Okay.
Because sometimes
Yeah.
they'll be charged right at the base of the house and they'll makes a pool. Well, that pool sits right at the base of the house, and then your slab starts wicking in that moisture, or if you're pairing beams, it can get up underneath the house. Once it gets
Yes.
there, it creates a humid environment under the house. When I look at the roof from the outside with that, I also make sure that your flashing is done right. Because, the way architectural work is done now, we have so many different pitches and angles to the roof.
Mhm.
You got to make sure where they come together that it's actually pushing water away from the house and not letting it go up underneath an eave where it gets underneath your soffits or fascia.
Note taken. Note
So you
taken
can
for our
start
next
bringing
house.
stuff into the house. And then last, I'll look at the grading around the house. I want to make sure that the
Mhm.
land is actually flowing away from the house so that when the water gets there, it actually sheds away.
Yes, and I remember you saying that when you were doing our inspection at our home, and we have since moved. Of course, we are now in North Central Texas, and when we were house hunting, we were very mindful of that and paying attention to things that we never really paid attention to before. But because we experienced that in our home and got so sick from mold due to a water leak,
Right.
we're mindful of that. And so I want to make sure that our audience is informed as well. So thank you for sharing that.
Oh, yes.
I also remember when you came out to visit, looking at the exterior of the house with you, I was kind of shadowing behind you, trying to understand what you were looking for. And good news to report, there weren't any problems on the outside. It was tough for us to
Right.
find where we had mold was coming from.
Yeah.
So, well, you've answered a couple of my questions. What is the first thing you do when you're looking for mold, second and third? So we've got your checklist. In my case, when you came out, you asked me, have you had a water leak? And I had to kind of jog my memory. We had been in the house, I think 3.5 years at this point, and I said, we have. When we first moved in, there was a roof leak.
Hmm.
But I was like, the builder fixed it, no problem. And you said, well, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go back up and I'm gonna look at that where the roof leak was. And I had shown you inside, in this bedroom. And sure enough, you got up into our attic. You were up there for about 5 minutes, and you came down covered in sweat, shaking your head, and said, "I'm so sorry, but you have mold, throughout your attic." This is it. When we couldn't find anywhere else, this is it. This is where it's at. And what we know now is, although they fixed and repaired the roof where the leak was, they didn't repair the sheetrock that was wet. And it was in multiple, through the attic, but in multiple bedrooms.
Yeah.
So you helped us identify that simply by asking those questions. You have a water leak, but I didn't initially think of that. Yeah, we
And
did
if
have
I
a roof
remember
leak.
right, it was done from where they put cleats up on the roof to fix the.
Exactly. Exactly. So shortly after we moved in, they had to do some repairs on maybe some stucco or something.
Right.
And when
So,
they got up there, put the cleats in.
yeah. And so the place where that was at isn't a normal place to look for a leak. It wasn't
Right.
down in the valley or anything. It was your input that directed me. I need to look at this to see what's going on up there. And sure enough, that's exactly what we found.
Yeah. And it was in a couple of spots in the ceilings.
Mhm.
And I work from home. And so I was breathing that in and day out. I was in that environment. My children would leave for school. My husband would leave for work, but I was sleeping, playing, working there. So I got a healthy dose of it.
Yes.
Um, that I think even when you were there and your wife was there doing the inspection, you all, bared witness to what I was going through, and
Oh,
I still may have had some tremors, and the left side of my body was still pretty weak. I mean, it was very weak, but I started sleeping in a tent in the backyard, and then ultimately we moved to a hotel and had mediation done thanks to, the work that you all found. Okay. So when you talk about 95% of your business, your house calls are because of mold, what are the most common symptoms of mold illness that you're seeing in folks that call you?
the most common, you have the allergies that won't go away. Just the overall, just I don't feel good. And then we start having the fatigue that they just can't get rid of. And then we'll start having skin issues, irritations and stuff. Just unexplained hives that will just show up, and they just don't understand what's going on. That the with the toxins and the molds are causing this allergic reaction that's manifesting in different ways.
Yeah. And there's a series of probably, 15 to 20 symptoms. And some folks may have, these 13 or these six, not everything. But now that I'm so well versed in this, it's, couple of these 15 to 20 symptoms that folks are getting. Are you able to share your your experience or maybe a case that highlighted how dangerous mold can be to human health?
Okay, well, one of the first ones I ever worked on was the Melinda Ballard case stuff that was there in Dripping Springs, where it's a very, anyone who's been around the mold for a long time has understood that that was kind of the keystone that initiated the mold regulations here in Texas.
Tell us about it.
They had the house was built. Apparently, they had multiple leaks of plumbing throughout the house, and they had all kinds of mold growing in there. And the husband, was exposed to the toxins to enough that he basically had short-term memory loss.
Mm-hmm.
He just they couldn't figure out what was going on. He had an example where he went to the store, grocery store, and this is a gentleman in his late 30s, 40s, go to the grocery store, and then he comes out, and I don't know where my vehicle's at. I don't even know
Oh,
what
yes.
vehicle I had. And it's just,
Oof. I can relate.
yeah, it's just those kind of issues there. One that I had more recently, we had a couple that had a child that has PANS,
Hmm.
and he was having severe flare-ups. The flare-ups that were putting him into the hospital quite a bit to try to get this under control.
And
But
you found mold in their home.
yes, and once we found the mold, we got it cleaned up. They did small particulate cleaning done of the house. We've done ozone, and the symptoms, the son still has PANS, but the symptoms that were being exacerbated, they're not having those same issues anymore.
Right. Because he's out of the moldy environment that some of those symptoms have quieted because his body isn't overloaded with the mycotoxins. He's starting
Right.
perhaps to manage that a little bit.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's those mycotoxins that really, because PANS is an autoimmune disease, and the toxins that are produced by certain molds, especially, I'll just pick on Stachybotrys because
Hmm.
it was definitely one that I'd found there.
And what is that also known as, Jared?
That's the black mold. And then
Okay.
the other one talks about, not every mold that you see that's black growing is black mold. It's just,
Right.
yeah, the black mold is basically called Stachybotrys tartarum. It produces basically two mycotoxins that are of key interest, saxitoxins G and H, and those are the ones that will suppress your immune system.
Hmm.
They're actually small enough to actually cross the blood membrane barrier,
Yes.
so that, and they inhibit protein translation. So that's where you start getting the neurological effects with these toxins, just because of their size. It isn't that you got mold in your blood, is that you've been exposed to the mold, and the toxins have been absorbed into your blood, and then they're transported around your system.
Yeah, so I think that's a really good point for us to make for anyone that's considering this. You don't have mold growing in your body. You are in a moldy environment. And as a result of being in that moldy environment, you have mycotoxins in your body, and the mycotoxins can wreak havoc. For me, I showed up quite a bit with Stachybotrys and then Aspergillus. Those are the two that we saw in our home. But you make a really good point that it's the mycotoxins that really start to cause trouble and
Right.
neurological issues, all sorts of things.
And recently I've had a lot of clients that when I go to their house, they start telling me, of course, I have mold in my blood. And I'm like, okay, you don't have mold in your blood. So
Right.
what did you have done? And as I started talking to them, they're starting to show me their antibody tests, for the toxin tests. And I was like,
Hmm.
okay, now I know what I'm looking at because it's the same detection methods that I used when I worked in the laboratory. We're starting to develop those antibody tests. Yeah.
Okay.
So we worked with a company called Envirologics that did a lot of sent us a lot of materials for us to test with our toxins. So we ran all kinds of different tests, different toxins to see what the limitations were of the test. And then so when they're sending me these results, then I'm actually able to see what toxins they're exposed to. And that actually helps me out quite a bit because I know which toxins are associated with what type of molds.
And then you can confirm it. We see
Yeah,
this, you likely have this.
but also it gives me the type of environment that that mold lives in. Because you have the molds like Stachybotrys have to have a really high water activity, a lot of moisture for it to grow. But
An
then
attic would be a great place for that.
well, attic, but also you have the roof leak and it stayed wet because you have to have what they call a water activity of 95, basically, or greater for it to really start growing. And then you got penicillium, aspergillus, you got ochratoxins and other things that are associated with those.
Hmm.
Well, that requires a drier environment. We're looking somewhere around 60, 70 water activity. So it helps me determine what areas of the house do I need to really look at? What level do I need to look at to find the mold? Just because, having those toxin results actually helps me in my investigation, determine where and what I'm looking for.
Okay, so Jared, not everybody knows to hire an environmental organization to come inspect their home, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't know about that till probably step 3 or 4 on this journey. And so if I am needing to do maybe an initial home test, I've heard that ERMI could be good. We personally did an air quality test. So if someone suspects mold, but maybe they don't see it, what are the first steps they should take perhaps before hiring you?
Okay. First, do a visual assessment of your house. Go through your sinks underneath. Look at your faucets underneath where you have leaks. Look behind the washing machine. Drain lines there will overflow all the time. If
Mhm.
you live in a pair and beam, look under the house. We've had several recently where we've had water leaks that went on for weeks or days, and we don't know. But then, I mean, if the bottom of your house is about 4 or 5 different colors, then you know you got a problem. Just look for water stains to see what you have. If you have anything leaking in, you'll see around windows are usually a pretty big area. Right now, for some reason, a lot of windows aren't being caulked and being sealed, so we're getting a lot of water intrusion that recently.
Interesting.
And then look at the exterior of the house. Do you have any cracks or breaks? Do you have missing water where it goes all the way through? Do you have areas where water pools outside at your
Oh,
house
yeah, okay.
where it's up against the house? Those are initial things you want to look at. If you're still wanting to kind of test to see what you have in the air,
Yeah, like a home test. What would be your recommendation? Is it ERMI? Is it air? Is
so
what is it?
Army was the one that you did, right? Was that the air testing one?
No, so ERMI was the one where you take the Swiffer more or less. It's like a
Okay.
Swiffer type material, and you take certain dust samples throughout the house. We actually did an air quality test called My Mold Detective, where we had the petri dishes of some sort, and
Okay.
then we held it up and took the air quality test. I can't remember, maybe 30 seconds or 60 seconds throughout the house. And
Right.
then we also had a test that was on the exterior, the outdoor environment.
So the Army, the wipe test,
Yes.
they can give you some information, but you got to remember mold is in the environment all the time. And you're always going to pick up something.
Mhm.
There's not a time that you're not. And what you're looking for is elevated levels. So when you're doing a swipe test or wipe test, you don't have anything to compare with. So that's kind
Mhm.
of hard to do. As far as the petri dish, when you open that petri dish up, what you're doing, there's limitations to it because what you're doing, you're getting culturability. You're not even getting viability, just what actually grew. Mold, as far as allergic reactions and toxins and stuff, aren't going to show up on that because you can have molds that are not viable or not culturable that are causing your problems.
Okay. Good to know.
Yeah. So now I will say when I look at a test and that has a plate, and I have certain species inside, and I see a bunch of them, then I was like, okay, well. And depending on what it is, makes me wonder, is there something to it? But you still don't have much of a comparison. Air sampling is honestly going to be one of the best ways to test.
And that's
It's
what we
fast.
did. That before we came to you, we did the air test.
And so I know I don't remember the name of the company, but they have a little machine basically uses almost the same cassettes that I use.
Yes, it was the cassettes. You're exactly
Yeah.
right. Yep.
Yeah. So you take the test inside, take the test outside. And that's what I'm doing too. I'm doing a comparison between the outside and the inside air to see if we have elevation of anything, because aerodynamics change throughout the day. So it's
Mhm.
not always going to be the same inside. And it's not going to always be the same outside. But what you're looking for, you're hoping that they're comparable to one another, or the air quality inside the house is better than outside if your HVAC system's working properly.
Right. Right.
So if I start seeing stuff inside that is significantly higher than what I see outside, or it's not outside at all, then that starts leading to we might have a potential issue here that we need to start looking for.
Yes. Okay.
And of course, when you have a consultant, it's not necessarily that you have to have air testing done, because once we are able to find the mold, there's really no necessity for air testing, other than if you want it for some type of baseline, or
Right.
if you're just wondering, what do I have in the air, or is this getting up in the air or not?
Yeah, or where to start. And truth be told, we did not have any type of odor in our house, which made it a little more difficult for us.
Right.
Again, like new build, we're like, this is crazy. Like we aren't gonna have mold. And then it was like, that's right, we had that leak. And then that led us to the answers. Okay, so moving on, we've identified the mold, it's in the house. Talk to me a little bit. We already talked about the bleach, so we'll leave the bleach out of this. Once mold is identified, what are the best practices for safe remediation? Now, for me, and in my experience and under doctor's orders, we were encouraged to get out of the environment until it was remediated. And that worked for me because, like you alluded to at the beginning of the conversation, once I got out, although I was slow to heal with the big symptoms, I did feel slightly better being out of that environment. And now, a year later, even that the house has been remediated, I'm fully out of the environment, don't live there at all anymore. So, what are the best practices for safe remediation, or what ensures safe remediation?
Safe remediation, of course, hiring a licensed company that knows how to do mold remediation. That's honestly going to be one of the safest ways to get rid of the mold. And also that comes with a licensed mold company has to have a licensed consultant that writes up a protocol. So the two entities, we have to be separate from one another. We
Mhm.
cannot have a vested interest in each other at all.
So take my case, for example. You guys identified the mold and then you wrote up the protocol.
That's
I then
correct.
took the protocol and I shopped it to a couple of different certified remediation companies. Then
Correct.
we made our selection. Then go ahead.
And then after they're done doing the remediation, then we come back in, or I come back in, and I verify that they have removed what was there, and also to make sure there isn't anything additional from, because once they open up an area, it's sometimes easier to see if there's more stuff outside of that area.
Mhm.
So we visually identify to make sure that the remediation was done properly. Then we take air samples to make sure that the air quality inside is better than the
Yes.
outside air. And so that way we can actually give you a clearance report, and then we can issue what's considered a certificate of mold damage remediation. That's a verification that that issue was taken care of.
Yes. And that's what we did with y'all. We went through that full
Yeah.
process.
Okay.
And
So
go
I'm
ahead, Jude.
going to kind of elaborate a little bit more. You're talking about then also, you know, in this in the state of Texas for mold remediation, homeowners are pretty much exempt from the regulations. They can remove as much as they want themselves. And some of the pitfalls that I see with that is they'll come in, just rip it all out and call it good. And it depends on their individual susceptibility to the mold, if they're going to have any health issues or not with that. But also, they're not containing it, and they're not protecting the HVAC systems. So when they're removing it, it's just sucking up everything into the HVAC systems.
Mm,
So with that, it's making sure that you contain and isolate the area where the mold is at, make sure the air is exhausted out and not coming back inside the house. And then it's personal protection, making sure you're wearing a respirator, make sure you're wearing gloves, suits, stuff like that, to be able to make sure you're not bringing it in and out with you, but also that you're not exposing yourself to it.
Right.
I've had people that have gone in and ripped it out themselves. I'm like, "Oh, we don't have a problem with it," and it never affected them. And then
Well, I think that's an important point to make. So
yeah,
we know now, and through research, and my doctor was stating that 25% of the population has a sensitivity to mold.
sure.
So that makes a great point. Jared, you could live in there and it wouldn't have bothered you at all. But because I was genetically susceptible, I struggled with it. So
Right.
you're absolutely right. Some people, no problem. For other people, it's the perfect storm.
And it's usually, what I'll say, going back to that, you'll have a couple and you'll have one of them that is really sick and the other one isn't, and they're like, "I don't understand what the problem is. Why are you having this problem and I'm not?" But yeah, it varies greatly, and those who, um, don't have the, sensitivity to it, usually don't quite understand how bad it can be for those who do have a sensitivity for it as well.
Absolutely. Yes, well said, well said. I'm living proof of that, and I shared, 2.5 years ago, I was thriving and healthy and fit, and when the perfect storm hit, which was being, genetically susceptible, prolonged exposure to mold, and a virus of some sort, it all came crashing down, and I was just truly debilitated with pain, with illness, unable to function, having to take long-term disability from work, and having symptoms of very scary things like MS and Parkinson's and stroke and brain, all of it. But it's wild when we put the pieces of the puzzle together that everything made sense. And my husband also suffered, but he didn't suffer quite as, I guess, intensely as I did. Our little boy did have symptoms, but our little girl did not. So it does affect everybody. A little bit different.
Oh, yeah.
Can you expand just a little bit more about the common mistakes you see people make when they're trying to do this on their own? You talked a little bit about HVAC. Are there other mistakes that folks make?
A lot of, I'm just gonna like we'll go back to the bleach and spraying it down. I'm gonna spray it with bleach, wipe it off, and call it good. You gotta remember, you need your porous materials to get rid of the mold is actual removal of that material. Sheetrock. When you
Cut it
find it,
out.
you gotta cut out the sheetrock, but not just the stuff that's moldy. You need to go 1 foot past it. Because
Hmm.
what happens is that you get your growth on there and the hiking stuff will spread through that paper and underneath. And when the mold colonies are immature, you may not be able to really see them or identify them. That's why you go a foot past that to remove any additional that might be coming off of that growth site area.
Yeah, I find myself now even looking at our children's school or in buildings, and I see the brown spots, and I think, okay, we can't do this. My alert goes off, my radar goes off. Can you talk to me just a little bit, given your expertise, about how someone can prevent? Let's say we're in a new build or we're in a new apartment. How can someone prevent mold growth in the first place? Now, I want to give an example. Let's say this is what I would think is a good scenario, how it's handled. You have your hot water heater leaks, let's say, and you catch it right away, like that morning it happens. Then you call Serve Pro or you call whoever. They come in, they bring in the big fans, they are doing the moisture meter, making sure everything is dried out. Like, to me, that sounds like a good plan. And then they come back and test and make sure everything is dry. Am I right on that? Or do I have it wrong?
No, you're pretty right on that. Now, things to also remember, we'll take the example of the water heater. Normally, your water heaters are sitting on top of a chase of some sort, and a lot of the times they're sitting on top of the same chase that your HVAC system's sitting on, especially if your HVAC system's not in your attic.
Mm,
So you need to make sure that you get into the areas where the water got, not necessarily drying the outside. You got to think about what did it wet, where did it go inside up? Did it get inside of a wall cavity? So do we need to open up the sheetrock so we can get that dried out inside? Do we need to open up the chase so we can get it dried out inside?
okay.
Yeah, you got your outside drying, and that's great, and you want to do it because Once you have a wetting event, you have about 48 hours window before mold growth will start setting up.
Okay, can you say that again? I think that's really important. Can you say that again?
After an initial wetting event, you have about 48 hours to get it dried out before the mold starts to set up in there before you start getting growth.
Okay, so yeah, this is just for us in the future, right? If y'all have a some type of moisture event, you have about 48 hours to take action.
Get it
Great.
dried out from the time that it gets wet. And once you do that, you'll see water staining, but you won't have the mold growth involved.
So, what are some other best practices? Let's say you move into a new home and we're going to assume it is mold free from the get go. What are some best practices to keep mold growth from happening? Dehumidifiers, share with us.
Okay, making sure that your HVAC system is that you're servicing it and maintaining it. Especially in our environment here, I recommend changing filters every month just to keep the airflow up because the more the filter gets loaded, the more back pressure you create in your HVAC system, which creates more humidity inside the unit, condensating, and then sends that water downstream into the indoor environment.
Okay.
So the HVAC system is definitely one of the big things to make sure it's being maintained. Check it, open it up, look at your coils, look at stuff inside the HVAC system, make sure they look clean. If you
Okay.
got a lot of water standing inside your unit, get with an HVAC professional to figure out why it's not draining properly.
Okay.
I see a lot of times that they back up. Also, new homes, make sure the HVAC, I'm going to pick on HVACs for a little bit here.
Okay.
New homes, make sure the HVAC system is properly sized for the house or for the area that it's conditioning. If you have a unit that's too small, of course, you're going to run it all the time. Yeah, it's going to cause your energy costs go up. But if you oversize the unit, it doesn't condition your air. It will come on, cool everything down real quick, and then it shuts off and doesn't come on for a long time. What happens with that? You're not removing the moisture from the air. That's what the
Okay.
HVAC system needs to do. You need to have the airflow going through your HVAC system, running through your coils, extracting that air and filtering your air. If your system is too large, it's not doing that often enough. And that's when you'll start getting a lot of moisture buildup inside your units. You'll start getting mold growth on your fans, on your filters,
Ugh.
and start getting condensation around your supply registers in your house. You'll start seeing rusting around the edges of
You're
them.
giving me the heebie jeebies just thinking about this.
So HVAC systems are a very key part because they're used for removing the moisture and the humidity out of the air. And then
Okay.
also there's other issues that go along with that. Yes.
So I have kind of a follow-up question because we're talking about HVAC. Flooring in these homes, right? We're going to stick up. Well, we can do, older homes and new builds. I understand in some homes there's a little bit of a controversial piece around the moisture barrier in these homes. When you're building a home, you can put a moisture barrier maybe before you put the foundation. So the moisture from the soil doesn't come up. And I've heard from folks that they had moisture coming up from their floors through the cement. I don't know exactly how all of this works. So that led me to think, well, if that were the case, is there one flooring over another, hardwoods or vinyl or maybe tile, that's better if you're in an area that doesn't require that moisture barrier when building a new home?
Okay. So if they do require a moisture barrier or don't?
Well, if they require a moisture barrier, it's my understanding that you're in good shape. It's when it's not required that this moisture is seeping up through the foundation of these homes, and that maybe your vinyl flooring like peels off like
Mhm.
wallpaper because there's so much moisture. So I'm curious if there's one type of flooring option that's better than the other to keep moisture from coming up from your foundation.
As far as keeping it coming up from the foundation, so if you're having moisture come up through the slab, and if it's a new build, it's probably because the slab hasn't completely dried out itself.
Mm.
Because you should have the moisture shedding away from the house. So you shouldn't have added moisture coming into your slab unless your grading is improper, you have a leak under your slab, or you have some type of hole or whatever that's allowing moisture to get underneath the house. So
Have
that's
you
very
worked on
important.
any homes that have it coming up through the floor?
The habit coming up through the floor, I've had some, yes, I have, and it's always been the grading outside.
Okay.
The dirt always slopes to the house, and when it rains, it just sets a pool of water,
Wow.
and
Yep.
it gets wet. And you can see with my moisture meter, I can detect it from the wall coming in about 3, 4 feet, and then it starts trailing off. And then as it
3 or
gets
4 feet up off
no
off the drywall.
3, 4 feet across the floor, across the
Oh,
slab,
got it. Okay.
coming in.
Towards the center.
And then as it gets dry, once winter or drier times, then it starts receding and it gets dry again.
Okay. Wow.
But if you live in an area where you have a lot more moisture, I could say around the Dallas Fort Worth area than what we have here, I could see where you could potentially have much more moisture coming in and then not having a chance to actually get out of the house.
Yeah.
Now, as far as a flooring goes, I don't know what would be better or worse. I would think you'd want something if it can breathe.
Right.
Something, example, tile. Tile breathes because of the grout lines. That's going to allow moisture to come up, evaporate off. Because remember, mold's going to grow on your cellulose material. So that's going to be wood, that's going to be drywall, paper. That's what the mold's going to feed on. The stuff that you're going to have coming up through tile, stuff like that, doesn't have anything to grow on itself, the material. Only if something is deposited on there is where the mold would grow. But
Okay.
what you probably would see through that is called effluence. Basically, it's the moisture as it comes through, pulls the minerals out of the concrete or out of the grout, out of the tile. Then as it evaporates, you'll see a white mineral deposit. It looks like little
Wow.
crystals growing up in it. Floating floors,
Noted. Noted. I'll be going with tile floors.
but tile's tile. Floating floors seem to be pretty well because if there is issues with that, people have been able to pull them up, get them drive back out, and then I haven't seen as much damage with those.
Okay. Those are called floating floors?
Floating floors,
Okay.
basically, they're planks, they're interlocked together. Those seem to be pretty decent and allow some airflow, depending on the vapor barrier that they put on those too as well.
Okay.
And then hardwood floors, they're nice, but if they get wet, that interface of the hardwood to the concrete or to the subflooring that's wet, I always find mold growth between those two layers.
Okay. That's,
We have an issue.
yeah, I think that's important to know because hardwoods, have been very popular the last 20 years, like true hardwoods in
Yeah.
addition to the vinyl. So that's worth noting as well.
It's an example. I had one actually yesterday. I was at a house that had a bathroom leak and had wetted, the carpet and into the living room. And this happened back on Memorial Day. So I got into it
So they've passed that 48-hour period by
just
a
a
long
little bit,
shot. Okay.
but it was
Oh,
still wet.
wow.
And they actually had a company come in and put fans in, dry it and everything, but it still
Okay.
retained the moisture. So when I removed the carpet, we had the hardwood floor underneath the carpet still. So when I removed that
Gosh, wow.
hardwood flooring, between the hardwood floor and the subflooring, it was all mold growth.
God bless them. Yeah. I mean, so that brings up another good point, Jared, is this could be overwhelming. Some people don't even want to crack the door open, right? Because they're like,
Right,
if we find mold, what does this mean? And I can relate. I talk about how I used all of my commissions to figure this out.
right,
And it was a combination of, healthcare and doctor visits, but also, the air quality test and the blood test with the doctor and then y'all's fee and of
right.
course remediation. So talk to me a little bit. Let's say I hire you,
Okay.
and to come out and say, "Hey, I think we have mold. What can we do? What does it look like?" Can you talk to me a little bit about expectations, the offering, and then the price? People have an idea of what it might look like to have what we call a mold detective. That's what my children called you.
Okay.
A mold detective come out and solve the mystery.
Okay. So I can speak kind of for the pricing for the company I contract through. I know just for the initial for me to come out and inspect a house, they start about $750. So I mean, I understand it's not cheap, but
It's
I'm
not cheap, but I also think it's important to put everything into
yeah.
perspective. If you are sick and getting worse,
hmm
it is worth
It
it. If you
it
can
is.
get to the bottom.
It's better to know than not know what's going on.
Right.
Or, you know, with something when I do an inspection, like I said, I'm looking for the mold, but I'm also looking at other issues that may be present that might be causing a problem too as well. And
Okay.
we found that before. We found a house where they thought it was mold. We could not find anything anywhere. But what we did notice is that they're using an air freshener that they pour on their air filter to add a
Oh,
scent to the air. Well, you start looking at the chemicals and then it's like, well, it's not mold. You have a sensitivity to these chemicals and you're having VOC issues from the exposure.
wow.
So,
Okay.
so
So
they
they
were
were
able,
putting a scent on their HVAC filter?
yes.
Okay.
So with that, we're able to find that that was a problem. I've gone
Okay.
into offices where we've had people complaining about our health. We can't seem to get rid of it. I've gone there, I've looked, and they have the metered air fresheners that spray every 5 minutes, 5, 10 minutes.
Mhm.
Once we remove those, symptoms went away. So
Yeah.
I look,
Wow.
I try to look at the whole what's going on, not necessarily just the mold itself.
Well, I think that's an
And
important point to make. It could be a number of factors, but often it sounds like in your line of work, it is mold. Is that safe to say?
yes, a lot of the times there's a lot of mold.
Okay.
Usually, because by the time, like I said, most of the time people already know that we have an issue that's going on here, and they bring me in saying, okay, we know we've had water leaks, we know we've had mold in here, we just need to know how much we have and what it's going to take to get rid of it.
Okay, so 750 for that initial visit, roughly 750 for
Roughly,
that initial.
roughly. And of course, it depends on the size, distance, and then also if nothing visual is able to be found, and we go to air sampling to see if we have something elevated, then you got sampling costs on
Okay.
top. And so it's going to vary, and that's why I don't go in and try to charge the most that I can. I don't. I know it's part of our ethics that we take and we with our license is to make sure that we keep costs down as much as possible and
And Jared,
not
what do you have your license in? Just so the team fully understands, like, because you're here in Texas, but maybe somebody from New York is watching this, like,
okay.
it's a licensed what?
It's a mold assessment consultant license. And we have it
Okay.
through the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation here in Texas.
Okay.
So anyone who does mold work that does it for a business has to be licensed. So you have a consultant license and you have a mold remediation contractor license. So there are varying degrees. They have technicians and stuff that are underneath those licenses, but they all have to work either underneath the consultant or the remediation contractor.
So our people should ask for that. There is, unfortunately, folks that take advantage of folks, and people are desperate. If they're
Oh,
sick and they're wanting to get to answers, unfortunately, people can take advantage of one another. So I think it's important for our listeners to know, ask for that certification, make sure you're working with a reputable company.
because Texas has a license requirement, Florida has a license requirement. Believe New York and California do too. I'd have to go back and look, but there's several states that don't have any licensing requirements to do mold consulting. That doesn't mean there isn't any good mold consultant people
Elsewhere,
around,
right.
but definitely, if you're in a state that requires a license, make sure that the person coming to do the work is licensed to do it.
Uh, One other question for you, if you can
Yes.
speak to this. Let's say somebody lives in an apartment and they suspect mold. That's tough because I might not be able to, one, financially hire you, let's say, but two, like I don't have the rights to necessarily have you cutting open the sheetrock and looking for mold. Have you run into that or anybody that lives in an apartment or maybe a co op of some sort where they are asking their property manager to do this for them and the property manager hires you?
Okay, so yes, I've run into that. Run to several different cases of that. We've had people that they're renters or they co-op. They rent a space out for a business, and they get in touch with the landlord. Landlord hires us to come in and do the work, and then we've run to the cases where the landlord doesn't want to do anything, and
Right.
then wonder what is the recourse. Well, most consultants, I included, will not do work unless it's through the property owner themselves. I can't do it for a renter because they don't have the authority to have the work done.
Okay.
And when it comes down to renters, like a residential renting place, there's really not much recourse because it's all up to the property owner what they want to do.
All right.
Now, it comes down to the civil suits at that point, and if that's the road that you want to go down, you need to make sure that you're documenting everything in writing of what you see, what's happened, your communications with your landlord. Most cities have a dispute resolution area where they can talk to attorneys with the
Okay.
city or whatever that see if there's something that they can intervene and do. And that's really pretty much your only recourse. There's nothing in the rules or the laws to require a landlord to fix any mold issues.
Okay.
Now,
Yeah.
if you
So hopefully your lease is up soon,
right,
or, stay the course and stay on that landlord until they
or
address it.
try to just come up with the say, hey, give me my deposit back. I will find a new place. You
Yeah.
know, if they're not willing to do anything with that, it's best to find alternative means because legal recourse. I mean, you're going to be tied up for some time. Chasing
When
that
you
down.
don't own the property. So, last question here, because we're almost out of time.
Okay.
If you could give one piece of advice, Jared, in your years of doing this, to someone who is listening right now and suspects that mold is making them sick in their home, what would your advice be to them?
Well, you know yourself, you know your body, you know if you're affected or not. I mean, we know if something's not right. And if you feel like it's not right, you need to check it out. If it's not mold or indoor air quality and it's something else, you always want to make sure that you rule out all the different potentialities that may be causing your issues. And don't put it off. If you do have a mold issue, you do have water damage, the longer you put it off, the worse it gets. Because if you still got something that's wet, it's going to continue to grow. The best thing to do is try to
Great
find
point.
define what's going on and get it stopped. If it's something that you can't take care of right then, at least you get with a professional a way to contain it, a way to isolate it, so it's not affecting you as broadly as it could. Um, and then get you a plan of action. Just make sure you find a consultant. Make sure you find someone you can trust, someone that's going
Right.
to communicate with you back and forth.
And if you're in Texas, we can call you up.
Oh, absolutely. You can call me. The company I work through is GA Environmental. They're here in Lubbock, Texas. You get in touch with them. You can actually request me to come out and do the assessment. My schedule is up and down because I do this actually part time as it is. I work full time for the municipality. I'm also a professional registered sanitarian. So I do health inspections
Well,
and everything else. So
we do a
environmental.
whole nother podcast on that.
Oh, yeah. So my company itself, I do, of course, focuses on mold and indoor air quality, but I also do safety consulting. I've years of process safety, accident investigation, root causes analysis, and stuff like that.
Well, you were instrumental in my mold illness, identifying the root cause and helping us remediate and get on our journey to healing. And we met about a year ago is when you first came to our home. And I am in such better shape now and my symptoms are at a minimum. So thank you. And you were diligent because I was like, no, there's more. We didn't get to it. And, and you just kept asking those questions. And did you have a mold leak? And yes, like that's it. Or a water leak. That's it. And helped us really put the pieces of the puzzle together. So thank you.
Well, you're very welcome. Thank you. And I'm really happy that you've had a really good outcome.
Yes, me too. So that wraps up today's conversation with Jared Martin. And I hope you all are leaving this episode with a sense of direction instead of dread. And mold in your environment can feel like an invisible enemy. I know I've lived it, but as we've learned today, there are clear next steps that you can take to detect it, to test for it, and remediate it safely. I look forward to visiting with you all again on the next episode of I Mold You So. Thanks so much.
The I Mold You So podcast with Katie Buckland Weiss.